Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The funk metal band Living Colour rocks Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia tomorrow night. I spoke with frontman Corey Glover to preview the concert, as well as reflect on the timelessness of the band's hit Cult of Personality, and even discuss his movie roles like Oliver Stone's Platoon. Hey, Corey Glover, hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you very much. Good to hear from you.
We are talking because you and your iconic band Living Colour, are going to be joining Extreme, actually. Everyone remembers More Than Words. It's going to be sort of a double bill there at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia on Friday, February 2nd, which is, that's Groundhog Day. So do you just play the same song over and over again?
We'll play it all over and over and over again, hoping for a different result.
I'm just kidding, but yeah, I mean, no, ditch on this show. Like, how long have you been playing with Extreme? Is this like something you do every couple years, or is this a first time tour with those guys?
It was the first time. We first started out with them this summer, in summer 23. We went out with them for like a month. Then we went to Australia with them, and we went to Europe. Well, we went to England with them for a few shows, and then we're doing this, and then we'll see what goes on from there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And give us a teaser of maybe on what sort of songs we'll hear. I mean, I guess Cult of Personality and any tease the set list without spoiling too much, if that's possible.
You'll hear what you wanna. How's that?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Now, we actually spoke with you in 2017. You called in. You were doing a Bill Withers tribute down at Gypsy Sally's in Georgetown,
Yes.
which that sadly no longer exists. I think it closed actually like right before the pandemic, so we can't even blame the pandemic, although it did cause a lot of other places in DC to close. But at the very least, that'll be a decent segue to remind folks of what you grew up listening to. I know you're born in Brooklyn in '64, but I assume Bill Withers and what else was sort of those early ones for you.
I listened to a lot of that. I listened to Bill Withers. I listened to a lot of Santana. My parents really liked to have music in the house, so we listened to a lot of stuff. Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, we listened to that constantly. So yeah, and there's a generation gap between myself and my siblings. So what they listen to and what my parents listen to and what I listen to, in some cases, were three completely different things.
Awesome. Was that a toilet or a sink in the back?
Probably a toilet. We're in a dressing room. I'm in a dressing room right now. We're playing in Roanoke tonight. So
another Virginia. All right, another local place, Virginia. There you go. All right. Well, I'm just making sure, as long as it wasn't your toilet.
No, I'm not sitting on the toilet. I'm not on the toilet. Just so you know.
This interview was the shit. Exactly. No, I'm just busting your balls. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember you were going on and on about Bill Withers, and then you said, I guess what, Santana's Abraxas and Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, and all that stuff last time. So yeah. I'm glad to hear that your memory hasn't changed. I guess your origin's the same.
No, it's all the same.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I also want, in case those folks missed that interview, I mean, they can look it up in our archives if they want, but in case they did, remind them really quick that music wasn't always the original dream. Like, didn't you want to originally start out wanting to be an actor? And you were in one of the greatest Vietnam movies ever, Oliver Stone's Platoon. Memories of sort of that early phase of your career and just that star-studded cast.
Right. Well, I started out, I was singing since I was like 6 years old. But I got the acting bug early on, and I started going out on auditions, and I started doing commercials and stuff like that, and auditioned for Platoon, and originally didn't get it. A friend of mine got it, and then he pulled out, and then it gave me an opportunity to be in the movie. So that was fun.
That's awesome. And we have to remind folks, I mean, not only are you working with Oliver Stone, who, this is his like big break. I mean, I guess he'd written Scarface, but this was his big directorial, breakout.
Right.
And gosh, Best Picture, but also you're on the screen with Willem Dafoe and Tom Berenger and Charlie Sheen and Forrest Whitaker and Keith David and young Johnny Depp briefly. Like, man, what did you always do you still sort of have a kinship with all of those talents? Like, wow, we kind of were on the ground floor together.
We talked recently. I got a call from Sheen about a year ago. I see Depp because he's a guitar player, and he goes out and plays. So I see him every now and then at a gig every once in a while, and we kind of reminisce and we're trying to move forward as best we possibly can.
Absolutely. Those Sheens, man. The dad has Apocalypse Now, and the son has Platoon. That's they got the corner on that market on the Vietnam movies.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But awesome. All right. So obviously, yeah, you mean you'd been playing music since you were 6, you said, but
Hmm.
you're doing the acting thing for a while. What was the official, hard right turn towards music? It was wasn't it like a birthday party? One of your guitarists in Living Color saw you singing Happy Birthday or something. Recount that real quick.
Well, that's the origin story of me getting in the band. Yeah, I was at a friend's birthday party, and they wheeled out a cake, and they asked, didn't the birthday girl said, "Okay, Corey, sing Happy Birthday." It's like, by myself, me. So I sang Happy Birthday, and Vernon was there with his sister, and he came up and we had a conversation about music, and he was very taken aback that I was the only person singing Happy Birthday, that no one else was allowed to sing Happy Birthday but me. And so we had a long conversation. A couple weeks later, he gave me a call saying he had this band and he wondered if I wanted to come in and audition for it. So I said, yeah, I'd come over. And it turns out he didn't live too far away from where I lived. It was a walking distance. So I went over his house and I heard a bunch of songs that ultimately turned up on our first record, Vivid. Like I Want to Know was there, and a few other things. So I listened to that stuff and we went over it and we had a good time. And then um, once again, I didn't get the gig. Somebody else got the gig, and that guy decided he didn't want to do it, so I got the job instead. Always somebody's second best, it seems.
I'm sensing a trend, but no, you're
Yeah.
not second best. It's just the way that it works. But you got to be the advice there is you got to be ready, audition and try out for everything, whether it's movies or a band. And
Right.
you never know. Even if you don't get it originally, hang in there. You might get the call. But
The
that
perseverance does pay off.
I mean, yeah, I mean, Drew Bledsoe goes down and you're Tom Brady popping in. You know what I mean? You never
Yeah,
know. Got to be ready. And of
exactly.
course, you mentioned Vernon, so that's guitarist Vernon Reed is who
Right.
we're referring to. And you didn't jump out of the cake that they wheeled out, right? You were just
No,
there.
no, no. I wasn't in the cake. I was actually in another room when they wheeled this cake out and they went and got me. I was in the
Okay, thanks for
yeah,
clarifying. That's great.
yeah.
But yeah, all right. So then you formed Living Color in I guess what 84. You and Vernon.
Well,
Um,
Vernon actually started Living Color way before we started Living Color, like in 1980.
oh, okay.
And he'd been with a series of other people playing other instruments, and when I came along, it was another bass player and drummer at the time, and then they left, and that's when Will Calhoun and Muzz Killings came along.
Gotcha. And talk sort of, I mean, at that time, I mean, it's hard. Genres are so fused nowadays, but at that
Mm.
time, talk about how, I mean, everybody, you always see the video of Run DMC and Aerosmith breaking down the wall on that Walk This Way remix, but you guys were like fusing, I don't even, I've heard it like called funk metal and hip hop, alt rock, like some
Yeah, yeah.
jazz in there. Like, talk about how you were even ahead of them on that.
Well, it's what they call it, alt the alt scene, and the alternative scene turned into what later on became Lollapalooza, really.
Right.
So we were sort of like ahead of the game on that.
Absolutely. And one other thing I always wanted to know was the name Living Color. I mean, if that's early 80s, you're predating the TV show In Living Color like almost
Yes.
by a decade.
Yeah.
Did you ever talk to the Wayans? Did they say they got the title? Were they inspired by you all, or was it just a
Not
coincidence?
by us per se, but we did have a conversation years before they started about it, and they wanted music from us. They thought it would be a really good sort of synergy for us and them to do something, and we kindly sort of declined um on that, and it became a thing that we don't talk about really.
Okay.
um
Well, I won't make you talk about it now. I didn't know it was a kind of a touchy subject, but
it wasn't touchy. It's not touchy, but they asked for music from us, and we declined, and we thought that there would be some sort of coming to an agreement that if you're not going to use the name, you're not going to use our music, you shouldn't use the name of the show as your show, and it did, and it caused some confusion for a bit, and then it didn't, and then we're still here.
Yes, everybody knows the difference now on your own
Yes,
merits between the two. That's great. Well,
exactly.
we have to go into that breakthrough debut album, Vivid in '88. I mean, especially that track, Cult of Personality. Man, I mean, I guess you win the very first Grammy ever for Best Hard Rock Performance, right? I guess they invented the category that year, and you beat Aerosmith and Great White and Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue. I
Right.
mean, gosh, that's a Motley Crue lineup right there. But yeah, just talk about just crafting that song. I mean, it was timely then, and oh my God, we couldn't even predict it. Even last time you and I were speaking, but in a couple years ago, but even today,
Yeah.
God, like the idea of a cult of personality after Trump administration, et cetera, it's just
Yeah.
I mean, that song is just as more powerful, I think, now.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole idea behind the song was, we spent a great deal. We had a loft that we rehearsed in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and we'd go over stuff and we do some things. And I had this idea that I sort of conveyed to Vernon, and Vernon didn't hear it the way I was doing it, and he turned it into what that opening riff is to Colt's Personality. And Vernon has a dog-eared notebook that he writes lyrics in and writes words in, and he had those lyrics from Colt's Personality, the song, in that book. And so we put it all together, and we spent all day working on it, and we basically created the song in one day. And then immediately we were playing at the now defunct CBGB's down the Lower East Side, and it went over really, really well. It was when you hear something and it hits your ear a certain way and it makes you feel a certain way, and you have something. That's the magic of music.
Oh, absolutely. And what I always thought was sort of genius about the song was, I mean, you're calling out sort of, some of them are obviously like evil cults of personality, but other
Right.
ones are ones that sort of we view positively. I mean, you juxtapose Kennedy and Gandhi on one side, and then you're also mentioning Mussolini, and you know what I mean? It's sort of
Right.
like, so just sort of speak to how that's sort of the idea is it can be used for good or ill, but it's this whole pop culture media phenomenon where people, I mean, they're flying Trump flags, and dang, I mean, it's almost like
Yeah, I mean,
the person can do no wrong in their minds. They're in the cult of personality.
right. The funny thing about it is that you don't know it until you're there, until
Mhm.
you see it, and no one really gives you. No one says take the red pill or the blue pill. There's not that. It's like you hear something that strikes you as truth, and you run with it. So, and the more you're in it, the more the rest of the world seems to close down behind you. So, and you don't know what's going on.
It's insane. It actually blows my mind how relevant that is. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'd love to get to some other stuff, but there is one other thing I had to mention before we leave that song. Is it was just used this past week, CM Punk at the WWE Royal Rumble.
At the Royal
Um,
Rumble. That's
who's
right.
been? I guess you guys performed it live at a WrestleMania back before
Yeah.
Punk left the company, and now he's back. And I think he even got injured, so he's probably going to be gone again. But anyway,
Right.
this isn't a wrestling interview. And God, that I don't know if you've seen the headlines. That company is going through some crap right now with Vince McMahon, but that's a whole different story. But anyway,
Right.
About CM Punk, man, did he ask permission to use it, and just how much do you enjoy that it's still, a whole new wrestling audience is still hearing that song? You guys are played every day.
Yeah. I mean, there seems to be it seems to have a universal appeal. For Punk, he was using it when he was a kid. He had when his little league went out on the field, that was their entrance music, and he really dug the song. So he gets he when he got to the WWE, that and before that he was in Backyard and he was doing a bunch of stuff before that, and he was always using the song. So when he got to WWE, that's one stipulation he had, was that song has to be a part of his entrance music.
Yeah, yeah. And I assume you get royalties every time it plays.
It it doesn't, it beats a hot stick in the eye. That's for sure.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, thanks. Well, right there, that's just proof in the pudding. That's like three questions I just asked about that one song. But do you ever get
right.
tired? Is part of you like, Glamour Boys was also nominated Grammy on that same album? Like, give Glamour Boys some love right now.
Right. Yeah, yeah, well, they Glamour Boys was, we all, when you're in a scene, there's always that person that is always at the height of fashion. It's always at the place to be when it needs to be there, when it seems to be happening. So that's how we that's how the song sort of, that was the impetus for the song. So when we got to it, it's always fun. It's always fun to do, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, we just mentioned those that first. I mean, you mentioned those two songs, and that whole first album was, Grammy nominated and winning smash. But the second one wasn't half bad either. I mean, yeah, Time's Up. You won another Grammy for hard rock performance. I guess you beat AC/DC this time, and
Yep.
Faith No More, Jane's Addiction, Motley Crue again.
Mm,
And I believe the category was eventually discontinued in like 2011. So basically, you're forever in the history books as the only two-time winners alongside Smashing Pumpkins and Foo Fighters. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
so tell me about not only that distinction, but Time's Up itself. Like that's a cool song.
Time's Up. Well, yeah, we were, I we had never seen anything but talking about the environment and what's new and what can be done about the environment. And of course, we have a more pessimistic view of what that's about. But we really sort of like leaned into the idea of what what is there left? Is there anything left to
Mm.
save? And what's deep about it is that you hear, science, climate scientists talk about, you know, we're not going to have we're not going to have all this stuff in another 2 or 3 years, and that song is over 30 years old. And like to say, you know, we said that 30 years ago. There's a bunch of songs like that's the one thing that seems to be very true about Living Color in and of itself, that we seem to write songs about things that always tend to be, that are either evergreen or on the horizon of something happening.
It's such a good point. Yeah, because now that I think about it, Time's Up was like 4 years before Michael Jackson does Earth Song, and
Right.
like probably like a decade before the Inconvenient Truth documentary, Al Gore. Like, you're
Exactly.
you're ahead of you're yeah, and here we are 30 years later, and we're still. I mean, if Time's Up was back then, time's really coming up now. We
Right.
better get on this. Well, maybe time for one more song. Tell me about "Leave It Alone." That's the fourth Grammy nomination. So I guess I would be remiss if I don't mention your other one. I guess it loses hard rock performance to Stone Temple Pilots "Plush,"
Right.
which is a killer track. But there's no losing. There's no actual winners and losers. Good songs are
No.
good songs. So tell me, off of that third album, Stained in '94. Tell me about "Leave It Alone." How did you come up with that?
Well, the whole idea of, there's always, you're always being part of a faction. You're always put in a category. And the whole idea of, how do you reject categories?
Mm.
How do you reject not being, like you were saying, this funk metal idea? How do you, we're not that as much as we're anything else. We're just four guys from New York City. And, even that, it's like, we're not really even New Yorkers as much as we are human beings. There's always a place, a a clique that you have to belong to in some cases, that we kind of reject outright.
I love that. That's such a great way to look at it. And
Right.
and I know you were. I mean, speaking of different clicks, I know I know you've done it under different banners like Galactic and the New
Mm-hmm.
Stew and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm pretty sure New Stew might have been what you were playing under with the Gypsy Salads thing, the Bill Withers thing. I think that
Yes,
might have been that.
that was
But
an
yeah,
issue.
so remind us really quick of how that fits in with, because obviously you're touring under Living Color. That's what's playing with Extreme this weekend in West Virginia.
Right.
So like,
Mm-hmm.
how have you gone back and forth? Did Living Color sort of like disband and get back together in between Galactic and New Stew, or how exactly did you juggle all that?
Well, I think that was in the mid '90s. We decided, we've, you know, We got a little tired. We'd been cranking out records. Like we'd go on the road. We'd tour for a year or so, then go in the studio and spend forever in the studio trying to making music. And it kind of got a little laborious. So we decided, let's take a little break. Let's go seek our fortunes elsewhere and see what happens. And maybe soon we'll come back. And fortunately we did.
You're always a wordsmith because you just dropped laborious on me, and I just heard it. I heard it like the Notorious, laborious.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, we opened sort of talking about Platoon and your acting, so let's maybe kind of bring it full circle. Didn't you also do Jesus Christ Superstar? You played Judas to Ted Neely's Jesus, and so what's the buzz? Tell me what is happening. Like what? How much fun was it going back to that? And do you plan on ever doing sort of Broadway stuff again?
I'd love to do some more Broadway stuff. If anyone wants to give me an opportunity, any Broadway producers out there looking for somebody that looks like me, that sounds like me, I'm here. It's funny. The place that we're playing right now in Roanoke is where we did Superstar here. So I'm looking at the backstage, going, "Wow, I remember this place."
Oh, you in that exact theater? You played
in this theater, yeah.
Wow. All right. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. You're resurrected.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, you've been so generous. Thank you so much for your time. Final seconds. How does it feel to be we've talked about all that where you're like the young hot artist, rising star, winning all these Grammys at your peak and all that stuff. What's it like sort of you're like an elder statesman now who's getting ranked on, VH1 greatest artists of hard rock, or I think even just last year, Billboard put you on the 50 greatest rock lead singers of all time, whatever, all these sort of stuff. By the way, you Public Enemy and the Roots opened up the Smithsonian, the Black History Museum. So you're sort of in this, I don't want to say life achievement. You got a lot left, but you know what I mean? There's a new part of your career where people are looking back to you as like one of the wise sages who can teach the youngins some stuff. So yeah, I don't know. What's it like sort of being at that point?
It's interesting, and who thought I didn't think about anything past the age of 30, and now I'm almost 60. So it's a very interesting thing.
A lot of rock legends don't make it past 27. The list is long, and there you are, 60 some and just kicking ass. And is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame going to come calling next, or do you not really care much about that kind of stuff? I know Bad Brains got in. I mean, I think there's other ones that I think you could get in.
I think we could. It'd be nice, it'd be nice to be recognized in some way. And we wouldn't turn it down, put it that way.
Awesome. Well, until that happens, come out to the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races this Friday to see Corey Glover live in living color with Extreme. It's going to be a fun time. So thanks for doing this.
It'll be a blast.
All right, you can copyright that laborious quote. That's fine. See ya, man.
All right, take it easy.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.